We are Casey and Savannah, and we've been best friends for over 11 years. 1 year ago, we left the city to live off-grid and start our journey to a more self-sufficient life. We bought 5 acres of raw land and have been building our homestead ever since. Follow along as we head into year 2 of building an off-grid homestead from the ground up.
Hello everyone, I'm Savannah, and today we are going to be talking about 6 popular gardening beds. Casey and I have been gardening together for 10 years now. We made our first beds almost exactly 10 years ago. And before that, I was sort of a landscape type gardener with my mother growing up. So we definitely have some experience. We are by no means experts, but we have experience in doing things and doing them the wrong way, and we'd love to share all of that with you now. First, let me say I'm in our bathhouse, which also right now is our seed starting area, and we've got all kinds of things started over there, lots of brassicas and alliums that are sprouting and growing, and most excitingly, our peppers have started sprouting today, which is very exciting. This is not temperature controlled in here, so was a little worried that the peppers were not going to do well in here, but they're on a heat mat. That helps, but they have still taken a long time to germinate, but I have seen a couple popping up, which is really exciting. But let's talk about why you're here. The first thing we are going to start off with is the green stalk. If you don't know what the green stalk is, it is a tower for gardening, and it allows you to put so much stuff, plants, like volume of plants, in a very small space. We have the 7-tier original planter, and then we also have the 5-tier leaf planter, and we have both of them on bases. One of them is on a spin base and one is just on a base that rolls. Now these are good for a lot of reasons. The first being that if you do not have a lot of space, if you live in an apartment or a really small house or you don't have a backyard, for whatever reason, a condo, fill in the blank, if you only have a small patio, this is something that you can put, and it will only take up about 2 square feet of floor space, and that will allow you to grow 5 to 7 times as much as you could put in a garden bed that big, which is awesome because it's kind of the equivalent of having one garden bed, but it's vertical. Even if you only have a small gardening space and you would like to have more plants, you could use this to add on to your garden without having to have so much floor space taken up. So we have these in our garden area right now. Casey had to level a spot for them. They're just immediately usable after some assembly. Another benefit to having the green stalks is that they actually sell a lot of accessories to make your life easier. They have trellis type things that you hook on so that if you grew something like a tomato or something that is not just like a compact lettuce plant like a cucumber, it can hold those from like laying on top of each other, so it's kind of like a ring that sits around. They also have covers so that you can keep bugs off, or covers for keeping frost off. So there's a lot of options already available to you if you use the green stalk. Another thing that is really good about them is that there are no small parts. You do have to assemble them. They come not assembled, but it's basically a matter of stacking things. You do have to make sure it's very level. So that is one thing that I might put on the cons list, is that if you don't have a super level spot, you have to make sure that it gets very level. And then when you're assembling it, it's very important that you don't put too much soil in there, because if you buy one, you will know that when you open it up that there are these little discs that sit in between each tier, and that's how it gets watered, and those have to be perfectly level for them to water the whole tower very well, which I should have said is another pro. There's a built-in watering system, so you don't have to go around and water each little pocket. You just pour water into this container at the top and it drips into the first tier, and then the little disc that's in between each one, that's what it drips into, and then it drips into the second tier, and it basically waters the whole thing for you. One of the cons for us has been not having those perfectly leveled, and that's definitely a user error thing, but something that we've had a lot of difficulty with. And every now and then we'll have to water some of the pockets by themselves. Also, you do need it to be near a water source. Ours is just kind of in the middle of our garden, and if it was by our house, it would be much easier to just pour water in there as much as it needs it and to be able to check it. But because it's not really close to us, we don't look at it as much, and then we also don't have water over there as much. So it's a little more, we have kind of like a design error right now where they are. Our plan for our garden, we'll have a greenhouse and we'll have watering systems up there, and we'll be able to take care of that. But just something to consider if you are looking into greenstock gardening. Now, Greenstock is having a sale right now until March 1st, and on top of the sale, you can use our code, which is just Hey Wanderer, and you can get $10 off on top of the sale. The 7-tier leaf planter is originally $189, and right now it's on sale for $119.97. You can also use our code on top of that to get it for $10 off, so $109.97. The 5-tier leaf planter, which is what we have, is originally $149 and it's on sale for $99.97. So with our coupon, you could get it for $89.97. So if you have been interested in Greenstock, this is a great time to make your purchase. And the leaf planters are great for things like flowers and herbs and leafy things like lettuces and kales and things like that. And this year we're really hoping to plant a lot of greens in there so we can have just like a tower of greens growing. We will see how well that goes. The next garden bed I want to talk about is the birdie's bed. We have 2 of these in the ivory color, and we put ours in the shape that makes it about a 4-foot by 6-foot-ish garden bed, and they were really easy to assemble. I will say there are a lot of small parts, so if that is something that you are scared of, just know that you have to assemble them. And it comes in 10 metal pieces in the beds that we have. So we have like the original 8-in-1 bed, which means you can put it in 8 different like shapes, whatever you choose. And they show you each one, like if you do it this way, then it's this much square foot, etc. So we did ours in the most square foot option that there was. So with each of the 10 pieces comes 5 nuts and bolts that you have to screw together to assemble it, and then you also have to put this rubber little topping on, which is kind of a pain in the butt to put on, if I'm being honest. But the good thing about these is that everything comes in one box. You don't have to make any cuts, you don't have to get together any DIY supplies, like it's all in there, and in about 30 minutes you could have a bed ready to fill with soil. It's really windy today, and the bathhouse isn't totally closed in, so you can really hear the wind inside of here. Another good thing about the birdie's bed is that they are coated in an alu zinc coating, and they say that it's 2 to 7 times more effective against rust than just a galvanized coating. This coating is also supposed to last 5 to 7 times longer than a wood bed. That is really something to think about. They are 15 inches tall, I believe, which is really good because if you've ever done a raised bed, you really want a lot of good material to plant things in. That's what's so great about a raised bed. Now, let's talk about the cons. First of all, they are a little expensive. If you went to go build a wood bed right now, same size, it would be less money. However, when repairing the wood bed or replacing the wood bed, in taking that into consideration, it could cost more in the long run to make a wood bed versus getting the metal bed. Another pro to the birdie's bed is that they do sell different heights. So if you want one that is taller than ours is 15 inches like I said, but they also sell them in a 30-inch tall variety. That is definitely a benefit if you really want a higher bed. The next garden bed that I would like to talk about that I feel like was a little more popular a few years ago, and that is when we did this, it's a pallet wood garden bed. So the good thing about building a garden bed out of pallet wood is that pallets are very cheap or free. When we did this, we got them all for free. I believe I have a blog post about how we built these, so I will link that below. Also, I will link Any resources that I talk about in this video, I will link it below. So links to the green stalk and the birdies beds, I will put those below along with our codes, and any links to blog posts that I'm referring to, all of that will be linked below. Because we had pallet wood in a lot of different widths, we decided to put the pallet wood vertically, and there was a brace that held them all together, and it actually looked really nice. And we painted it white, and we had to line the inside with plastic because you don't want the chemicals from the pallets to leach into the soil, but then you have a plastic situation. So the biggest pro is that they are very cheap and you can make them look nice, and they could be free basically. So that is the only reason we ever even tried this. However, there are a lot of cons. It is a lot of work taking pallets apart. If you've ever done it, not easy. Some pallets disassemble easier than others, but we did a lot of hard labor to get those separated and all the nails out. Now, they just don't last that long, let me just say. I think had ours for a couple of years and then we moved, but there was already some pieces that we thought we should replace. The good thing is you could just take one piece out and replace it, but you really want your garden beds to not have to be fixed in 2 years. So it's an option if you want to do something, you don't have the money right now to build a garden bed, but you have access to pallet wood, you could do that. We even have a blog post on how to fill your garden bed for very cheap, very little to no money. So it's just a way to garden very cheaply, and there is definitely something to be said about that. Gardening can be a big investment, and if you want to grow food, you don't necessarily want to spend all this money right up front. Nice to try it out with something that doesn't cost a lot of money. The next one I want to talk about is the garden beds that we will be building some this year, and that's just a simple wood garden bed. So the first garden beds we ever built, we bought some 2x6s, and that is how tall our beds were. We just built a frame, just like, I think they were 12 feet long, so 12 feet by 4 feet, like this. And it's just like a piece of wood, a piece of wood, a piece of wood, a piece of wood, the end. They were screwed together on the edges, the end. We're going to be building something like this year that's going to be probably 2 2x8s on top of each other so that they are 15 inches tall and the same height as our birdies beds. We are going to do some things to protect them, so coating the inside in a garden safe material and also coating the outside so that we can just slow down the process of the aging of that wood. I do believe this will make them last a lot longer. The pros to this will be it's very simple. You make minimal cuts. So if you wanted to make an 8x4 bed, you would get 3 pieces of 8-foot wood, whatever height you wanted, and you would cut one of them in half, and then you would screw them together and you'd have a garden bed. We will also be adding some bracing, so in the corners, a piece of wood that can really hold everything together, and a brace in the middle so that the middle is, not push outable. That requires more cuts, but it's also just very simple. If you know how to use a chop saw or even a hand saw and just cut a straight line, you could build this bed. You do have to do a little more planning, like a little more thinking, because you have to know what size you want. You have to buy the right things like screws and things from the store, but it is a fairly easy DIY. But if you are not a DIYer, a con would be that this is a DIY. A con to the wood bed is something that we've already talked about, is that wood does not last as long as some other materials. You can do things like coating the inside with garden seal to keep it from rotting from the inside so quickly, and then you can also put something on the outside to seal it so that water isn't also contributing to the decay of the wood. So I think that if you do the right precautions, it can last enough to be worth it, but it is just not going to last as long as something like metal or concrete. Another pro to the wood is it is not that expensive. Now, there was a time when the wood prices had gone up that it was pretty expensive, but they have gone down, so it's still fairly cheap to make one garden bed. Now if you're going to make a bunch of them, that's going to add up, but that's the case for any of these garden beds. Alright, next let's talk about a garden bed made out of fence pickets. So this is something we did to make it a garden bed even cheaper than just the wood that I was just talking about. A little more expensive than pallet wood, but less expensive than buying a 2x8 and making a bed out of that. So fence pickets are thinner than a 2x4. So a 2x4 is 1.5 inches wide when you buy it at the hardware store, and a fence picket is 3/4 inches wide. The good thing about fence pickets is you could get a cedar fence picket for fairly cheap, and cedar, as you probably know, is something that is naturally insect repellent, and it's slower to decay than other woods. So if you wanted to do something with cedar, that would be a cheaper option, as a 2x8 of cedar will cost you a lot of money. Now you can also get the fence pickets that are treated. Now these come in, the most popular length is 6 feet. So when we did this, we had to do special like calculations to make them into the 4x8 shape. You can get fence pickets more like the wood. It's not actually cut into the picket shape, but the actual same exact size in an 8-foot, but it costs significantly more money. For this video, we're just going to be referring to the fence pickets that are 6 feet long, and they have that little shape that's like the top of a fence. You could build a garden bed in many different ways with these. I've actually considered doing a bed like that this year. We may still do that just to show how you can do it. But the way we did it before, did it long ways, and we had to like kind of piece it together. What is really the most popular is just to make a 3x6 bed. So using the 6-foot piece as the long side and cutting it in half to make the other side 3 feet. So that's the simplest way to do it. And in that way, you can make a garden bed for very cheap. And you would still want to consider sealing or lining with plastic, depending on which one you're using. But definitely an option. It looks nice. The wood is rough cut, so if you like that look, you could have it. You could also sand it down or plane it if you had that, but planers are not just like a normal DIY tool to have, so definitely something to consider if you had one. But do know that it is rough cut. And if you don't know what that means, like, it just looks rough. So you know how you get a 2x4, the wood is smooth. This is that raw look. Now I would like to say for all wood beds that we've talked about, you could paint them. So that's one pro, that you could have any color you wanted. You wanted a hot pink garden bed? Wood would be the way to go. And the last garden bed that we are going to talk about that we have tried is concrete blocks, cinder blocks, if you will. So we made a garden bed out of these. I think it was a 4x4, and all you do is you just set them down in a square and fill it up. And honestly, if you have a flat piece of ground, it's so easy. Now if you need to level, that's gonna make it harder. And also, it just looks like you laid a bunch of cinder blocks down and put a garden bed in it. So something to consider. It's not like you can set them down and have a garden bed, and they're fairly cheap, so that is a pro. But you probably would want to put like the block that's like this big. I think it's like a, it's like a 4-inch brick that's solid that you put on top of it. That would make it look less like just cinder blocky. People will also take concrete and kind of smooth out the edges, which is like you've gone into a much bigger project. But if you like the concrete look, that is something you could consider and could be fairly cheap. The biggest pro about concrete is that it will last for a very, very long time. You could seal it if you wanted to make it last even longer. And with the cinder blocks, it'd be really easy to replace one if one of them went awry. That was not our favorite garden bed, just because the way, just like putting the cinder blocks down just didn't look like what we would want it to look like, really. And concrete cinder blocks can be a little annoying to work with. You can smash your fingers very easily. We probably won't be doing that again, but it's definitely an option. And if you do just set the cinder blocks down, the little holes in the blocks, you can put soil in those too and plant stuff in those. We did that. And it kind of like, that makes it look less cinder blocky when you have things growing out of that too. So definitely something to consider. If you have a surplus of cinder blocks, you could just put them together and have a garden bed. All right, so those are all the ones that I'm going to be talking about in this video. If y'all like this content, we have lots of other things that we have tried, lots of different things that we could talk about if that's something you're interested. If you have any gardening questions, seed starting questions, anything like that, just leave us a comment below. We love to hear what you guys are actually interested in. I hope this helps you in your garden journey this year or in the future. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Give this video a like and check out all the links below where I link to all of the projects that we've already done in terms of gardening beds and the links to where you can buy ones if you don't want to DIY your own. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.